What's up? Thanks for having me.
Stand up! Don't be shy.
Thank you. Thank you. I spotted in the crowd, you also should stand up for production designer Christopher Glass. Is there anybody else who worked on the film this year? Stand up. Stand up if you worked on this film. Hey! Rachel Waters, who plays Stevie. Stop them. And we have our reporter back there. Who else? A lot of folks we had background here. Yeah, it was supposed to be in Oakland, obviously. We only filmed like a week in Oakland and filmed the rest of it here. So,
How long did you shoot in Atlanta?
Yeah, 37 days, yeah. Split up into 5-day weeks, yeah.
Okay.
And we had we were here for prep for like 5-6 weeks before that.
Okay. I recognize you did a good job of hiding it. You did a good job. Usually, like, our favorite game is to watch shows on TV and point out the Atlanta spots. I was only able to find one.
Okay.
I was only able to find one.
Which one was that?
Greenbrier Mall. I still shop there.
Yeah. See, a lot of those malls look so similar that everybody swears that's in Hayward when they see the thing. Yeah. Because, you know, at that same architecture.
Nah, I know Riches when I see it.
Riches. Okay, throwback.
This was beautiful. This was beautiful.
Thank you.
Speaking of making certain parts look like Oakland, I was actually sitting next to Adesla as we were watching the film, and she's like, "Hey, those are miniatures." And I'm like, "Yeah, those are miniatures." I want to hear you talk a little bit about your decision to create Oakland, or what I guess San Francisco, with the hills and the cop cars and the vans. Instead of, I guess, going over budget to use real ones, you used miniatures. And I want to hear you talk a little bit about that decision.
Well, it was always the plan to do the inside of the mall as a miniature. That was always. I'm a Virgo. We used a lot of miniatures, and so I always had that in the plan, and I talked to this earlier version of the miniature team about it, and then I had done like a stick figure storyboard of the rest of it, because I was like, we're gonna shoot the rest of it on the street and we only need 27 setups or whatever it was I was saying, but then it became clear that even that was gonna cost, you know, a significant percentage of the budget for that, and usually the argument is like, okay, this is an indie film. There's no way we're gonna spend like $4 million on just the thing. And so I was still trying to whittle it down to like, oh, we can do it simpler. Like maybe we'll be inside of the car, we'll make them do more funny stuff, and then we'll be inside of the car more, and we just need a couple things on the outside. And it was getting more and more watered down in that way. And then while we were having one of these meetings, Chris Warren, the guy who from Blind Beagle, who was already on to do the miniatures for the mall, was just like, we got buildings, we can just put it up on a hill and slide it, we just do that. And I was like, yeah, okay, listen, that's what he said. And then it became that whole, and then it started expanding from there, because of course now you can do way more than you would do shoot. Even then at first we were like, we'll shoot plates on the street and then we'll do something else. But yeah, so then it got to be where now the cars are flying up over the hill and stuff like that, just because we could.
That was really dope. That was a really cool addition. Speaking of, I want to stay in the
I'll say this too.
Oh, go ahead.
They are Blind Beagle who they're really good, and there were times when I was looking and I was like, it looks too real. So I was like, we don't want to go through this doing the miniatures and you don't feel it, and it just feels like a regular city street. So we kept pushing it to where it would have a, you know, it would kind of give you this something's off feeling, even if you don't know that they're miniatures.
So to make it feel like you were kind of in like this surreal world, like
To make it feel stylized, like there's a, you know, at one point I was helping develop a thing that I jumped off of, and the whole idea was to shoot it in New York, for instance. And I was like New York City was like, I mean, to me, it's the worst place for me because it's been shot 10 million times, and how are you gonna make, so I had said, okay, well, we'll do it in miniature and we'll make all the buildings feel differently, and so we can stylize it. So yeah, it was like this, well, a way of paying attention to detail in a different way. What I learned from music, first when you start recording music, you're like, why are we spending half an hour figuring out the reverb on the snare? Like, it doesn't matter, it's just the song. And that, to a certain extent, you gotta have a good song, right? But you start realizing, yeah, that reverb on the snare, how much is on that, what kind, how much it repeats, all of those little details matter. And so this idea of having some things that you can control even more and push into whatever feeling you want it to have is interesting to me, in terms of, especially if it's real and right and done in front of the camera. Sometimes people try to do that with CGI and it just all doesn't feel different. It just feels like this smooth thing, you know. I always talk about how you could have a CGI skyscraper stand up, walk over and take a shit, and it wouldn't be amazing. It would just, oh, that happened, right? But it should be amazing if a skyscraper takes a shit.
I do agree. Sorry, I'm like imagining it now. I want to talk about costumes. Can we? Something that leading up to the screening, I was like, I want to know why everyone is monochrome. Like, I want to know why. And for me, what I interpreted, or what stood out to me, was that I only saw monochrome in oppressive workspaces. Which, shout out to you for always calling out oppressive workspaces in your work. And so I would like to hear a little bit more about your intention behind that. Was that your intention, or was that just some fly shit that you wanted to put in your film?
Well, it's interesting because it does only happen in oppressive workspaces, but it's my attempt to make them less oppressive because we got to sit there for a long time watching it. Like when I did Sorry to Bother You. Thank you. After I wrote it, I was like, damn, I gotta sit here in this telemarketing office. I was just trying to get out of this, and you know, so I was like, okay, how do we do it so that you're not every second being like, I want to leave, right? And for me, I actually don't like going in department stores. I'm the person, if I have to go in, I'm okay, that's it, that's the thing I want, and I'm out. So I was like, so this time I was aware, maybe more aware of that, so I wrote in that whenever we were in these stores, they were monochromatic, and I wrote in the story beat of why, because I was trying to make it a place that might seem as amazing to someone that was into people that love that they love Christy Smith, they love the fashion. How do you make it seem amazing? How do you make it seem larger than life, like it feels to them? You know, in contrast with, you know, the rest of the world where she's squatting, things like, even though, you know, that's also heightened. You know, so that was the idea behind that, is to try to make it feel like a place that they wanted to be in, that felt like something they were drawn to.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I pointed that out, or it dawned on me in that way, because Corvette and her friends were always against the grain. They were always different from everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, when they were robbing, like they did and pardon if, you know, like if this is the wrong term, but they had like the Harajuku fashion, and then they were all up and down in flowers. They were always different from everybody else. But then, of course, when they were getting the job and having to blend in, that's when they did the monochromatic.
Oh yeah, as far as their fashion is concerned, yeah, they had to blend in with the rest of the walls and the furniture. And so there, that has that feeling, I guess, but the intention was to kind of mirror Corvette's admiration of the place.
I wanted to know something that stuck out to me, other than the costumes, were the way that everyone was speaking. So I'm looking at Christy, I'm looking at Will Poulter's character, and they all have this very superfluous, like, griff speak. It's like love and light and capitalism. And I know we see a lot of that now, but I wanted to know, were there any particular influences that were drawn to you to create these characters, or was it just something that, like, because it's everywhere, that you just included it in your story?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's specific reasons, like the management using what would have been thought of as quote-unquote woke language, right, to say that they're silencing, and there was more of that in there, but that got cut for pacing and time. But yeah, that the taking of any sort of culture that we make where we think that the culture is radical or the culture is progressive, but it's not tied to anything material changing, then that always gets subsumed by whoever is in power. So he's using language that is formally, at least at the end when he's like, I feel like you're silencing me, you know, that's formally used for people to assert their power when you know, in spaces where they are powerless, but he's using it with power behind him. But yes, the part of it is also taking shots at kind of like the you know, new age sort of speak, sort of hippie-ish stuff that can come. But with Christy, some of it was just, I had her like cussing a lot, and then, and actually Demi was like, well, you know, shouldn't we show also she's a genius? And so then I thought about it, and then I went and looked up antiquated cuss words. So, you know, like, I found some ones that felt juicy, like mumble crust and fustelarian, like things that mean that you have to fight for your existence, but that they were using as, you know, some sort of insult.
What's a fustelarian?
Someone that has to fight to live. and you know, and so, you know, like if somebody is in the ruling class, they, or you know, or just rich, they might have been like, oh, that's fustelarian, like that's below me, you know. But you don't even need to know when you watch this, you can feel it, you know? And so I had stuff like that. But also, with Christy, it was also, she believed it, right? She believed that, that since there's no way to change things, that she's doing some service by changing the way people perceive things.
I hear that a lot, actually, where you see that a lot, where folks are like, well, things aren't going to change, so I might as well. And I think that was a theme beautifully illustrated, where in some ways Corvette thought the same thing, right? Where she didn't think things would change, so she was just concerned about money, until she found connection at the end.
Well, I don't think she was only concerned about money. I think she was wanting connection from the beginning, but she wasn't seeing what was there around her, as well as hadn't come into contact with this larger way of feeling connected to the world, which is what she was going for with her art.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I see it.
No, I think I appreciate the correction, honestly, because she talks about being lonely a lot in the movie, and I have to remember that that was something that she was trying to vocalize with her friends. When you were directing Kiki and the rest of the cast, I know you talked about Demi adding to her character. How much of the actors brought themselves to your characters?
Well, I count on it for everyone too, because usually when I'm writing, my connection to their humanity of the humanity of the character is to put myself in all of them. So, you know, even though what I'm writing is not like some TV show where every character gets their own episode or whatever, and we don't need, to me, I don't think we need to learn everything about everyone. I try to give people, I try to argue from their point of view, and I try to give them a good argument, right? And that happens within all the conversations. They're all versions of me, connected to also people that I know, but I have to put the humanity in it. I have to advocate for them, you know, inside their body in a certain way when I'm writing. But then, when the actors come on, it's about them having connections to things that they've had happen in their life and what they can bring forward. And often, they will also, you know, advocate, like, why would I do this if this is that's happening? This and that is happening. There's a back and forth with all of it. So yeah, there are all sorts of things that come up all the time, and to me that's like part of my process is working with the actors.
Yeah.
Part of the write. To me, there's no difference between the writing and the directing. Mm-hmm. Like it's all one thing. In the middle of a thing, I might be like, cut. That's terrible writing. Like we got to come up with something else, right? And I don't know what the politics of that would be if there was a writer there that had written it, or if I was the writer and there was some director there, so to me it's all one thing. When I'm writing, often things will be described out pretty in a lot of detail, not because they're going to necessarily always stay that way, but because I want to see the movie. I want people to see the movie when they're reading the script.
So I'm always curious when directors or writer-directors create very surreal worlds, what their process of like storytelling is in terms of script. Do you go in with like I guess, like a skeleton, and you know the bare bones of what you want to happen, and then you create, and then you like add on along the way, or does it all come to you at once? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I get. I'll usually like have what I think is the beginning, the middle, and the end in my head, and then I'll write it out in, an outline or something like that. And then I start writing and know that that outline is gonna change. It's just what I'm starting with. And there's all sorts of versions of how that happens. But with this one, I was like, because often my methodology is, what that device does, it heightens the contradiction. So what we call surreal is often, I think it's closer to absurd, right? When I think about the capital S surrealists who kind of were all about Freud and all that kind of stuff and dreams, and then you think about the absurdists who did what I'm talking about doing, but supposedly to show the ridiculousness of life in the sense that it all doesn't matter. So that's definitely not me either, right? But I think what I'm doing to show the ridiculousness of things is closer to that, in the sense that I want to heighten the contradiction, to show you that, and to talk about a thing that maybe we don't think about in a certain way or not, and that may be visually, that may be story-wise, all those sorts of things. So with this, I was like, okay, what that piece is to me is the fact that all of this, that really they are part of a commodity distribution chain, and where is the beginning of it, right? And so I was like, okay, a bunch of boosters find a teleporter. And that was like how I would spit. A lot of times I'll get to like the essence of something, like with I'm a Virgo, I just said 13-foot tall black man lives in Oakland. And that was it, that was like how I sold it, and then I go off of what that is. That's what it was. A bunch of boosters find a teleporter. Now, I started writing that and I got bored. Because that brought those two ends together. But then I went off and finished writing I'm a Virgo. I wrote these two other scripts that I've since sold that are my next things. But as I was writing, and as I was writing those, I started thinking about science fiction. And, like I'm always like, what is it for? What does it do culturally? Not that there's any one answer. But one thing I thought about was how science fiction really, some aspects of it have changed our notion of existence, right? So for instance, there is no time. There's only right now, this moment, and everything before is just in our memory. And what we think happened and what did happen, but maybe is also in our memory. And the future is just our imagination, and all we have is right now. Now that's empirically, scientifically provable. But I sound like a hippie when I'm saying it. And the reason I sound like a hippie is because science fiction films, who have told us that about time machines, and the only reason we may not have a time machine is because technologically we haven't got there yet. And which makes us think, yeah, there is past. The past does exist outside of our mind. It's there. So anyway, I have nothing against mythology. I have nothing against believing bullshit, because sometimes it helps us. But what I was thinking about is, okay, well, what if the thing that was in it was like a real philosophy that I use not only in my life, I don't necessarily think of the terms or whatever, but I use it as I'm thinking about the world and how things are working and what I'm gonna do, what I should do, what I should do in the story. I was already using dialectical materialism as a philosophy as I was writing the story. So I was like, what if I put that in a machine? And what does that do to our notion of existence? So that's that. So that's then once I did that, I got excited about the movie again. And that's where that comes from. But the answer is, I do outlines, and then things happen. I do a little bit as I go, and then sometimes the end changes. Sometimes I figure out a different way to get to the end. All of those things.
I really appreciate you shedding light on how you developed this story specifically, though. Like, that was really cool. I was really moved by the protest scene, for lack of a better description. But what you were just saying about what happens when you take that machine and use it for different use. I wanted to hear a little bit about, you mentioned like your views on the world. So just a little bit about me. Once upon a time in another life, I worked in a restaurant. The thermostat in this particular restaurant, where we were forced to wear all denim, if you know, you know, read 97 degrees. And on top of the thermostat reading in the 90s, we were also running out of chicken. And so, you know, one thing after another, and I'm like, hey, these conditions, guys, this doesn't make sense. We should just walk off. Like, there's no reason for us to be working right now. And everyone was like, I gotta work. I got kids. I got, you know, I need these tips. Man, gone. You know? And so, was there any intent to like impact the audience, to send a message? Is it just something that you wish to see in your lifetime, for people to stand up, wake up, and, you know, get it together? Yeah, I want to hear a little bit about your thoughts, because that resonated with me.
Well, actually, it's art, and people can take it how they want. No, I'm just kidding. For folks that don't know or couldn't tell from the movie, I'm a communist. I believe that the people should democratically control the wealth that we create with our labor. To even attempt to create a movement that could possibly get there one day, I think that we need a mass militant radical labor movement that uses the withholding of labor as a tactic and strategy to affect policy change, and then grow into something more revolutionary. But we're right now in a time where you know, where they can just play in our face and say, yeah, we are committing genocide. Yes, we are going to commit more genocide, and there's nothing you can do. And they're not wrong at the moment. The only thing we can do is create something that can actually challenge their power. And their power is capital. Their power is capital. And that is what we have to be able to stop it. We have to be able to to stop the machinery and have them exact our demands. We're not we're not there yet. But however, over the past 10 years, specifically over the past 5 years, from summer 2020 to 2024 was the largest strike wave in US history since the 70s, with thousands of strikes going on all over the US. Some work stoppages, some full-on strikes, and a lot of it in places that had no union, right? Like, so that where people were organizing. And so, it's interesting, when we were doing the surveys for this, you know, we did a lot of tweaking to this, because what I didn't realize, well, I guess I realized it, but I didn't think about it. In earlier versions of this, people were like, so they're protesting at the end? It wasn't really clear to people what the difference between a protest and a strike was. And that has to do with the movie as it was, but it also has to do with how the left has, for the past 60 years, run away from class struggle. Until recently, I'll say, with the exception until recently. So to where we've put everything about let's get out and let our voice be heard. And that's the answer to it. We could get 10 million people on the street worldwide, and surely people will understand that all of humanity is against this, and it'll end. And you know, that puts forth the idea, a false idea of how power works. So I realized I had to make more clear for folks who already weren't on board what exactly a strike was, what it actually meant was happening. And so for folks that already know, it might be kind of like, oh, why do they have this in here? But actually, a lot of people are just like, oh, okay, they mean stop the machines, and you know, and so now the profit stops. Anyway, so yeah, the idea is to, and obviously it's a lot more work than happens on this movie, but I think one thing that does happen in some like trade union struggles is we only see the weeds and we don't see what's further. And I wanted to make something that not only got people excited about the possibility of organizing on the job, but also seeing it as a power play, that the working class could form this sort of a movement. And yeah, it's not as easy as, you know, we don't have a situational accelerator. You know, the organizers are the situational accelerator, right? And so, yeah, and so yes, I want people to come away inspired to say, yeah, there is a way to change things, right? And hopefully it's something that organizers can use. So what I did find out is, sorry to bother you, during that strike wave period I was talking about, I would get dozens of messages from people who said some version of this, which is saying, yeah, at our job site, we were trying to have a strike, or we were trying to make this union, and we didn't think that people were going for it. We weren't having a lot of success, but we had everybody watch Sorry to Bother You, and then everybody voted to strike, or everybody voted to have a union. And there was one story that was funny from Baltimore, where they said they had a 60-person work site, and it was going to be a show of hands of whether people wanted to have a union or not. And they thought they were going to win, but they thought it was probably be a nail biter, like there was some forces actually organizing against them, successfully organizing against them. And it was time for the show of hands to say that you want to be in the union. And right before the show of hands, somebody said, "Equisapiens, let's be out." And everybody laughed, and then every single person raised their hands. So it gave me, you know, definitely it's my most effective piece of, that Sorry to Bother You was my most effective piece of art in my whole career. And then we'll see, hopefully this can be useful as well.
Do I have time to kick it to the audience? 2 questions. All right, make it good. Okay, you first. I'm looking at you. Yeah.
So, first of all, I want to say I love the film. Also, with the building being expanded, how did that work? Is that miniatures?
The outside of it was just a picture that we, right? But the inside of it, ask Christopher Glass. You gotta talk loud.
Yeah, we built it. We built this at a 15-degree angle. Oh.
And I was arguing for 25 degrees.
Yeah, he wanted 25 degrees,
And I thought it was a big. I thought I was selling out.
but what Goose doesn't know though is that he was kind of right. So we actually increased the degrees to 17.
Oh shit! Okay.
We used a crane and we pumped it up because I was like, oh shit, he's gonna be disappointed. So we did
Cool. 17 degrees.
17
I like
degrees.
that. All right.
But yeah, it was kind of dangerous, and but we had to figure out a way to make it so not everyone had to be strapped in. 25 degrees would have made it so everyone had to wear safety lines. So 17 was our compromise. So it was a compromise, but it still felt.
Yeah, we still had to have the lines on some people, and people were using Dramamine and all that kind of stuff.
They were getting nauseous.
Yeah.
I had all the lines in the floor, like all the colorful lines.
Yeah.
And it being slanted.
It feels weird.
It kind of makes you seasick.
But then after you're on it for a while, all of a sudden it seems like everything's straight.
Remember the first take of the heavy ship thing? It was like.
Oh yeah, it fell over. It actually
It flew off the set.
almost fell on Demi. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
All right, I've got one more question. I'm going to go to, okay,